You're never going to need to learn AI because our world is changing and intelligence becomes commodified. And if it's very easy and is actually intelligent, then we don't need to actually learn it. There are a few different AI models that you're probably going to want to develop a relationship with, though, just to stay in the loop with what's possible. Also, to be able to build on top of what already exists. Cheers. Knowing how to code in this era with AI is one of those, like, you technically don't need to if you want to get to one specific place in your career, but if you actually want to generalize that and do that multiple times, then you actually do need to know how to structure language. And now it's possible for us to describe what we have been doing and ask AI to extrapolate and provide a direction to people who are developing into their careers. I've already described about 2 years of active relationship with a plateau of development. And that's kind of, I'm not sure how to phrase that. If I were illustrating with a visual medium instead of just talking to the camera, then perhaps the image would be more useful. And as I'm saying that, I recognize that I can practice the skill of prompting an image. Imagine a software engineering career has a few different trajectories, and you can choose which one you're paying attention to at any given time, and there are tracks, and you can switch between them. Within a company or within an organization, there are going to be velocities of attention to logic. This is business logic, meaning the things about the business that make whatever you're doing relevant per moment. Now there are new structures that can consistently represent and extrapolate among the human corpus from the human body of knowledge. So more people have access to more handles for navigable logic. When you phrase things this way, it becomes clearer that AI isn't going to replace as many jobs as it creates because more people can participate with intentional logic. There are a lot of habits that exist in the modern workforce that aren't traditional, and because of that, don't represent any stakes at the scale that the habit is recognizable. How do I say this? Traditions aren't bad, but sometimes they enter a space where the tradition is more of a habit and it isn't culturally aligned. And there are often going to be people who, year over year, consider traditions irrelevant, and this makes it harder to maintain any. This makes it harder to maintain any traditions, often when there isn't enough momentum behind the concept of maintaining a tradition for the sake of it. Which industries do we want traditional? We saw Hollywood describe changes looming, and that was a couple years ago. And Netflix is seemingly buying Warner Bros. And have people been going to movie theaters? How do we share the shows that we watch? What is a pace for releasing a show that's desirable? Can I rely on an audience who is subscribed to Claude Code to be able to download the source for a show and wait for Midjourney assets generated in real time? I'm pretty sure Midjourney names the images they generate in a predictable format. So if you know the prompt ahead of time, then you can wait for a style. That's actually a pretty good idea. Hey, authors! Going through engineering courses, there was always background lore about how somebody invented a very small component or a seemingly small component that a lot of people don't think about and then made millions of dollars. What's the concept here? The concept is that engineering courses have background discussions of success stories that shape the ways engineers imagine their impact. But then there's a lot of wonder about when I describe something useful, because if I design something that can potentially put my family through school, if my motivation is to put my family through school, and that's the concept that I'm designing because I want to be able to share that language with my family, then where do I start to build? If I already know that I'm productive, how do I turn this into something sustainable? I really appreciate the community that's been growing on TikTok and the years that I've spent here and the people who I've formed relationship with during that time has been fantastic. Have been, I think the years that I've spent here and the experience of forming relationships, those have both been fantastic dimensions. Fantastic entries in the collection of experiences that I consider. What is this? I'm toying with the shape of the plurality of the statements and the cluster of things that I'm grateful for through TikTok while acknowledging that the videos don't directly relate to any specific grounding in an economic development. How do I say that? I understand that these videos alone don't directly contribute to my economic stability, and I wonder how to make what I have been developing skills in alongside this journey. How do I make that more accessible? Currently, I owe like $500 for my servers, and until I pay that, I won't have a convenient way to host the code that demonstrates what the code does. And also, some of what can how do I say that? I'm looking for language still. Forming language and I'm practicing, so this is the process. I want to say that the software that I've designed can sometimes be implemented to an extent by describing what is meant to exist. And if that is possible, and I improve the software, but someone believes they are going to develop along a dimension on their own, they could be wrong, but they wouldn't know. And they already have a concept of what the software that I've described is supposed to do. So that experience has already been spoiled. Should I start vague posting more? I have been generating a lot of software projects with these AI models over the years, and not all of the projects are interesting. So it's one of those things where I can describe a lot of how you can explore AI as I explore the space conceptually, and AI can turn into a black box. And I can also describe what I'm building and how do I fund what I'm building, wondering out loud. Books are pretty popular, and I think that's a good thing for a lot of reasons. And the difference between a physical book and an ebook is significant, although they both are vehicles for storytelling. And it isn't just physical books and ebooks. There are also audiobooks and other modalities for telling stories like podcasts or video essays or videos like this. My canonical career has been in software engineering so far as of early 2026, although maybe this is the time to change that and have my canonical career be in production, media production, traditional, digital, and generative. Print, traditional, generative, and digital. I'm sure there's a catchier way that I can portmanteau. I got fired right before ChatGPT came out and saw the writing on the wall for a lot of careers, and some of them I hope that I've contributed to stabilizing in some capacity. Although, what is stability? And this has been a challenging concept to explore because part of my lore is that I was fired from a site stabilization team 2 weeks before my ADHD screening appointment. Well, no, actually, see, I'm getting the lore confuddled because it's been a while since I've thought about it, which I guess is a good thing, and I've talked about it, and I wonder where that's going to go. I was planning on going through the ADHD wonder process to a point where I was satisfied and was given a deadline to get a diagnosis. Or not to get a diagnosis, but to justify needing time. Days without meetings is what I requested, and I cited that I might have ADHD, and they asked for proof. And I said I was going through a screening process, and they gave me a deadline, and it was 2 weeks before my 90-day review. That's it. I think it was like 16 days. Um, and I got distracted there. Thinking about that, yeah, actually, it's strange to look back on. I thought that I would need to describe that more. It comes up because that's the reason why I didn't have a job at a time when AI was learnable and developing, and I got to see a lot of ChatGPT feature development and how X developed a lot and Blue Sky and is there another one? Yeah, actually, I recently started working with Claude and Gemini. I started prompting with in 2025, I think. I always say it, but my major in college was learning and education studies with a concentration in applied learning science. And that's what I consider. That's what I think about. I dropped out, and when I run into situations where people value the concept of a degree more than they value the substance of it, I have been presented with the opportunity to defend myself or ignore it. And there, I wonder if the verb that I ever would be able to do is defend myself or defend my ego. And sometimes it is necessary to have an ego shield, and sometimes the concept of an ego shield is simply the lack of an ego. And this is something that can be meditated on for a long time. I mentioned that my major was learning and education studies with a concentration in applied learning science because learning is the first word of the major that I chose, and the applications of learning science are relevant for actually measurable, making sure our development is something that we can measure, something that we can consider and understand exists with consistent reality. Also, education studies, learning more about how education has existed historically and in the local contexts of whomever I'm working with. I might call this one How I Developed Fluency with AI while maintaining respect for a traditional practice, because art has a spiritual significance and we can maintain communication. We can develop stable channels for communication and maintain goals towards relationship. I'll have to think about the phrasing on that one. Hey, AI, here's some homework for you. Think of the phrasing for that one. Cheers.